I copied hundreds of abilities for my boyfriend, helping him reach the peak and become king. The second day he became leader, he personally crushed my hands to protect his white lotus, the school beauty. Aurora, your hands are too dangerous. What if you copy something you shouldn't? Lying in a pool of blood, I looked at the -2000 malice value above his head and laughed. Caleb, you forgot. The last thing I copied was your prized S-rank bone manipulation ability. Aurora, don't blame me. Caleb's voice was soft, like a feather brushing past my ear, but it brought pain like a bone-scraping steel knife. Behind him, Ava peeked out, her beautiful eyes filled with tears, as if she had suffered a great injustice. Sister Aurora, don't blame Caleb. He's doing it for the good of the base. Your ability is too unstable. Yes, Aurora, Caleb echoed, his tone carrying a hint of self-righteous tenderness. Your hands can copy anything. This is our greatest trump card, but it could also be our greatest hidden danger. Above his head, the bright red -2000 malice value flashed like a vicious alarm. I looked at my right hand, twisted and deformed under his foot, blood and mud mixed together, indistinguishable. So this is your reward for me? My voice was dry, each word squeezed out of my throat with difficulty. Aurora, how can you think like that? I'm protecting you, and I'm protecting everyone. Protecting me? I laughed, the vibration in my chest pulling at the wounds all over my body. Turning me into a cripple is your protection? Ava immediately grabbed Caleb's arm, her body trembling. Caleb, see Sister Aurora, she doesn't understand you after all. I told you, she would definitely resent you. I'm sorry, Sister Aurora, it's all my fault. If it wasn't to protect me, Caleb wouldn't have. Shut up, I roared, using all my strength. Ava shrank back into Caleb's arms, tears streaming down her face instantly. Wah. Caleb, I'm so scared. Sister Aurora looks so fierce. Caleb immediately hugged her tightly, his gaze towards me filled with disappointment and coldness. Aurora, look at yourself now, full of resentment and hostility. Crippling your hands was definitely the right decision. He raised his foot and unhesitatingly stomped on my left hand. The sound of bones breaking was so clear it made my scalp tingle. Agony instantly overwhelmed my nerves, and my vision went black, almost fainting. I let out a suppressed scream. Caleb didn't even bother to look at me again. He gently comforted Ava in his arms. Ava, don't be afraid. I'm here. She can't hurt you. She's just a useless person who can't even open a bottle cap now. Ava raised her head from his arms, looking at me with tearful eyes, but a secret, smug smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. Sister Aurora, I'm sorry, your hands must hurt a lot, right? But there's nothing we can do. Who told you to be so powerful? So powerful that even Caleb is afraid of you. From now on, I'll protect Caleb. You, just be a useless person. Caleb hugged her and turned to leave, as if discarding a piece of trash that was no longer useful. Lock her in the water prison. No one is allowed to visit without my order. The cold command came, and 2 guards immediately stepped forward, roughly dragging me up from the ground. My hands hung limply, like 2 broken rag doll arms. As I was dragged into the darkness, I raised my head and watched them walk away embracing each other. Caleb, Ava, do you think this is the end for me? You forgot. Just a second before you crushed my right hand. My last touch was me using all my strength to grab the hem of your pants. That instant of weakness, and the surge of familiar yet unfamiliar power deep within my bone marrow, are both telling me, copy successful. S-rank ability, bone manipulation. Your trump card is mine now. The dark and damp water dungeon chilled me to the waist. Each breath I took was filled with the stench of rust and decay. The agonizing pain from my crippled hands, intertwined with the weakness after copying an ability, threatened to consume my consciousness. I leaned against the slick wall, letting the icy water drain the last vestiges of warmth from my body. Unbidden, the snowy night from 3 years ago surfaced in my mind. The weather was similarly frigid then, when Caleb and I were trapped in an abandoned gas station, surrounded by roaring mutated beasts. We had no food, no fire, and Caleb was burning with fever, shivering in my arms, his teeth chattering. Aurora, am I going to die? His voice was weak and breathy, his lips frozen purple. Looking at him, I had only one thought. I can't let him die. Summoning my last bit of strength, I rushed out of the gas station, frantically searching amongst the beasts. Finally, I found a mercenary with the flame ability. I desperately lunged forward, seizing his hand. Copy. The cost was a week of extreme weakness, but when a small, warm flame flickered in my palm, I felt it was worth it. I held Caleb in my arms, using the ability to warm him, all through the night. The next day when he woke up, he held me and said, "Aurora, you are my life. In this lifetime, I will never let you down." Later, to make him stronger, I copied powerful abilities for him, one after another. Metal hardening, lightning control, rapid healing. Each copy meant another period of weakness. The worst time, I fainted for 3 whole days and nights after copying the A-level spatial barrier for him. When I woke up, he was watching over my bed, his eyes bloodshot. He held my hand, saying over and over, "Aurora, that's enough, don't do this anymore. It hurts me. I don't need to be so strong, I just need you to be okay." How sincere those words were then, how ironic his betrayal is now. The iron door of the water dungeon creaked open, and a bowl of spoiled rice was thrown into the water, quickly sinking. "Eat it, you waste." A guard's contemptuous voice came from outside the door. The leader said he can't let you starve, he wants you to live well, and watch him and Miss Ava live a good life. I ignored him, slowly raising my head looking at my 2 limp arms. Pain, a pain that penetrated to the bone. But beneath that pain, a new power was stirring. It was Caleb's S-level ability, bone manipulation. It was rampaging through my body, as if searching for an outlet. I closed my eyes feeling this power. "Caleb, your biggest mistake wasn't crippling my hands. It was giving me a pair of hands that can reshape everything. You think this is hell? No, this is my rebirth." I started trying to control the strange power within me. Bone manipulation, as the name suggests, is the ability to manipulate bones. Caleb could use it to make his bones harder than steel, and instantly grow sharp bone spurs from his fingertips. And I now was going to use it to do one thing, reshape the bones of my own hand. As soon as the thought arose, the pain came in geometric multiples. I could clearly see the fragments of bone in my wrist, like a pile of carelessly discarded pebbles, embedded haphazardly in the flesh. What I had to do was use my mental power, like countless invisible hands, to put each fragment back in place, and then reassemble them. I clenched my teeth, not allowing myself to make a sound. The first step, separation. I mobilized that power, carefully enveloping a small fragment of bone, and separating it from the clinging flesh. The feeling was like someone using a dull knife to repeatedly stir and scrape through my flesh. Cold sweat instantly soaked my back, and my teeth bit my lips until they bled. But I didn't stop. The image that surfaced in my mind was Caleb's indifferent face, as he crushed my hand bones. Hate is the best anesthetic. 1 piece, 2 pieces, 3 pieces. I endured unimaginable pain, separating all the bone fragments from the flesh. This process took me a full 5 hours. There was no sense of time in the water cell. I could only judge by the frequency of the guards bringing food. When I finished this step, I was completely exhausted, collapsing into the water, gasping for breath. Just separating them had almost exhausted all my strength. Next was the even more difficult reassembly. I needed to piece these fragments together perfectly, according to the original structure of the bones. This required an extremely precise understanding of the human skeletal structure, as well as strong mental control. Fortunately, in the past 3 years, in order to replicate various abilities for Caleb, I had studied countless ability principles and human anatomical diagrams. I closed my eyes, and a perfect model of a hand skeleton appeared in my mind. Then I began to manipulate the bone fragments, moving them inch by inch, closer, aligning them. Click. A slight crisp sound. The first phalanx was successfully pieced together. The immense joy dispelled some of the pain, giving me the motivation to continue. This process was even more painful than separation. Each splice was like experiencing a new fracture. I trembled with pain, my consciousness jumping back and forth between wakefulness and unconsciousness. I don't know how long it took, but when I finished piecing together the last carpal bone, it was already dawn. A faint ray of light shone in from a crack in the top of the water cell, landing directly on my left hand. which had already regained its original shape. Although still covered in blood and gore, the bones inside had been rearranged. An unprecedented feeling came from my palm. I found that my perception of this hand had become incredibly clear. I could even feel the flow of marrow in every bone. At this moment, the iron door rang again. Today's guard had changed, and he looked at me with undisguised malice. "Oh, still alive? You're tough." He threw the bowl of food into the water, and then suddenly took out a stun baton. "The leader was afraid you'd be bored, so he asked me to keep you company." Blue arcs of electricity danced on the tip of the baton. He grinned and extended the stun baton towards my arm. "Don't be afraid, it'll be quick and fun." The electric baton, buzzing with a harsh electrical crackle, jabbed towards my shoulder. Just as it was about to touch my skin, my left hand, the one with reshaped bones, moved. My 5 fingers, with speed and angles exceeding human limits, abruptly seized the tip of the electric baton. "What?" The guard's sinister grin froze on his face. He tried to pull the electric baton back, but found that the metal rod was as if welded in place, unmoving. Your hand." He looked at me in horror, his eyes almost popping out. My hand was supposed to be a limp mass of rotten flesh. I didn't answer him, but slowly raised my head and gave him a smile. "You just said you wanted to play with me?" My voice was soft, but it made the guard tremble all over. Above his head, a -350 malice value was flashing wildly. "No. Impossible. Your tendons are clearly—" He didn't finish his sentence. Because I suddenly exerted force with my 5 fingers. The electric baton, made of refined steel, was twisted into a pretzel in my hand. Broken metal shards were deeply embedded in my palm, bleeding profusely, but I felt no pain. The reshaped bones gave me strength far beyond ordinary people. The guard was scared out of his wits and turned to run. "Want to leave?" I chuckled softly, and my other, still limp, right hand swung out in a strange posture. A broken bone in my wrist was launched like a bullet, using my bone control ability. The bone fragment accurately penetrated the guard's thigh. He screamed and fell to the ground. I slowly stood up from the water and walked towards him step by step. With each step, I used my power to repair the bones in my right hand. The bone-deep pain returned, but my expression didn't change in the slightest. The guard looked at me in horror, retreating on the ground. "Monster. You're a monster." I walked up to him, looking down at him. "Now it's your turn to play with me." I squatted down, picked up the broken electric baton from the ground, and pointed the sharp break at his other, undamaged leg. Don't come over. Help. Someone help." He roared frantically, his voice filled with despair. The soundproofing of the water prison was very good, and his voice couldn't travel far. "Shh." I put a finger to my lips. "Quiet, you'll disturb others." His malice value was jumping wildly above his head. -400, -450, -500. Just as I was about to stab him, hurried footsteps and a piercing alarm suddenly came from outside the water prison. "Enemy attack. People from an enemy base have attacked. Everyone prepare to fight. Where's the leader? Quickly protect the leader and Miss Ava." The outside world instantly fell into chaos. The guard's face showed a look of joyous relief. But I stopped my movements and listened to the noises outside. "Caleb, your trouble has arrived." The footsteps were getting closer and closer, and someone was running towards the water prison. Not a guard. The footsteps were panicked and familiar. It was Ava. The iron door was violently rammed open. Ava rushed in with a panicked expression. She didn't even look at the guard on the ground. She went straight to my cell. She looked at me with a twisted pleasure and viciousness. "Aurora, the enemies outside are too strong, Caleb. Caleb can't hold on." She grabbed the iron bars and screamed. "It's all your fault, you piece of trash. If it wasn't for you, Caleb wouldn't have been distracted. Now the base is going to be destroyed. And I'm going to die too." She seemed to be crazy, found a fallen iron rod outside the door, and glared at me with resentment. "Since everyone is going to die, then I'll kill you, the source of all this trouble, first." She used all her strength to stab the sharp iron rod through the gaps in the bars, aiming for my throat. The iron rod whistled as it stabbed straight for my throat. Ava's face held a madness of mutual destruction. However, The iron rod stopped less than a centimeter from my neck. I raised my left hand, 2 fingers, and nonchalantly caught the tip of the rod. You say? Who is the menace? My voice was calm, but to Ava, it was like a thunderclap. She looked at my hand in disbelief. The hand that should have been crippled was now intact, even whiter and stronger than before. Your hand. How is that possible? She tried to pull the iron rod back with force, but found that the rod was as steady as a mountain in my fingertips. Nothing is impossible. I exerted a little force with my fingertips. The iron rod snapped in response. I let go, and half the iron rod fell into the water, splashing a circle of ripples. Ava was so frightened that she retreated repeatedly, sitting on the ground, pointing at me in terror. You're not Aurora. You're a monster. You're a demon. I ignored her screams, looking past her at the chaotic firelight outside the water prison. I used my bone manipulation ability to easily break the lock on the prison door. I pushed open the heavy iron door and walked out. 3 days in the water prison had left my face a little pale, but my eyes shone with incredible brightness. The guard who had his leg injured was so frightened when he saw me come out that he fainted directly. Ava was still screaming on the ground. Don't come over. Don't come over. Caleb, save me. I walked up to her, squatted down and pinched her chin. Your Caleb is now struggling to save himself, he can't save you. Looking at her tear-stained face, I suddenly found it a little funny. It was for a woman who could only scream and cry like this that Caleb crippled me and ruined himself. What do you want to do? Ava asked, trembling. Don't worry, I won't kill you. I let go and stood up. Killing you would be too good for you. I turned and walked outside. I'm going to let you see with your own eyes how everything you're so proud of collapses little by little. The base outside was already in complete chaos. Shouts of killing, explosions, screams, rose and fell one after another. A group of ability users wearing enemy base uniforms were burning, killing, and looting everywhere. And the guards of our base were retreating steadily, routed. I saw a few familiar faces, all ability users who had been suppressed by Caleb in the past, now surrounded by enemies in imminent danger. Without the slightest hesitation, I rushed over. Because of the reshaping of my bones, my current body has strength and agility far surpassing the past. I don't even need to copy other abilities. Bone manipulation alone is enough. 5 sharp bone spurs popped out of my fingertips, and like a black lightning bolt, I charged into the enemy ranks. The bone spurs slashed through, and a fire ability user didn't even have time to release a fireball before his throat was pierced. I backhanded an elbow strike. The bone in my arm instantly hardened and protruded, hitting the chest of an earth ability user. The earthen wall in front of his chest shattered in response, and the whole person flew out, his chest bones completely broken. In just a few dozen seconds, all 7 or 8 enemies surrounding them had fallen. The ability users I saved looked at me in shock. Aurora. Sister Aurora. A young man named Jasper stuttered. Your hand. Is it healed? I retracted the bone spurs and nodded. Where's Caleb? A trace of anger and unwillingness flashed across Jasper's face. Leader. He took Ava and a few cronies and escaped through the north gate. Escaped. This result, while within my expectations, still made me feel disgusted. This was the man I once risked my life to assist. Faced with disaster, his first thought wasn't how to protect the base, but to escape with his woman. Yes, we all saw it. Another ability user said indignantly. He ran as soon as the enemy attacked. He left us all here to die. That coward. If it weren't for Sister Aurora, what would he be? Sister Aurora, what do we do now? There are too many enemies. We can't hold on. Everyone spoke at once, their eyes filled with despair and hope. They subconsciously looked to me as their backbone. I looked around, flames soared into the sky, and the base's defenses had been breached in several places. The enemy's offensive was fierce, but not without flaws. Their forces were scattered, each fighting on their own, clearly aiming for looting. Jasper. I looked at the young man. What is your ability? It's wind blades. You. I pointed to another person. And you? Vine entanglement. I quickly asked everyone present about their abilities, and rapidly formulated a plan in my mind. For the past 3 years, to help Caleb, I had studied almost every ability user in the base and how their abilities could be coordinated. Now this knowledge had become my greatest asset. Listen, my voice wasn't loud, but it clearly reached everyone's ears. From now on, everyone follows my commands. Vine ability users, go to the eastern defense line and coordinate with the earth ability users to create roadblocks, delaying the enemy's advance. Wind blade and fire ability users, form an assault team and come with me. We're going to take out their command center. Everyone else, guard the medical station and the warehouse, protect the civilians. My orders were clear and decisive, carrying an undeniable force. The originally panicked crowd seemed to find direction, and immediately started moving. Jasper followed beside me, saying with some worry, "Sister Aurora, we don't know where their command center is." I sneered, "I do. I had dealt with the leader of this enemy base before. He was an extremely arrogant and greedy person. Right now, he must be in the most conspicuous and luxurious place in the entire base, Caleb's leader's office." I led a team of a dozen elite ability users, avoiding the frontal battles and cutting through the side paths to the base's center. Along the way, we saw too many messes left behind by Caleb. Gaps in the defenses, empty armories, and chaotic personnel deployments. One member couldn't help but curse. "Damn it, what the hell has Caleb been doing for the past month? He's made the base like it's made of paper. What else could he be doing?" Jasper snorted disdainfully. "He's been touring the mountains and rivers with Ava every day, purging dissidents. A few days ago, just to get Ava a beautiful energy crystal, he deducted our team's supplies for the whole month." "That's right. And Mr. Davis, just because he accidentally bumped into Ava, Caleb broke his leg. He's still lying in the medical station." The accusations of the crowd made the killing intent in my heart surge even more. Soon, we arrived at the administrative building where the leader's office was located. Downstairs, a team of enemies was indeed guarding it, led by the enemy base's leader, a bald, muscular man with a face full of malice. He was kicking open the office door, laughing loudly and shouting, "This place is good. It's mine now." Behind him, a subordinate asked flatteringly, "Boss, what should we do with that little girl we caught named Ava? She's really good looking." The bald strongman licked his lips, a lewd smile on his face. He, of course, I'll keep her to deal with properly." I stood in the shadows, listening to their conversation, and slowly raised my hand. "Move." The battle erupted instantly. The bald, burly man clearly hadn't expected that in such a rout, someone would dare to attack him proactively. But he was, after all, a leader, and his reaction was extremely fast. He crossed his arms in front of his chest, and his skin instantly turned a rocky, grayish-brown color. It was the A-grade stone body. Jasper's wind blade struck him, only creating a string of sparks, courting death. The bald, burly man roared in anger and slammed a fist into the ground. Several sharp stone spikes shot up from the ground, piercing towards us. But I was faster than him. The moment he uttered the first word, my figure had already disappeared from where I stood. The reshaped bones allowed my explosive power to reach a terrifying level. I appeared to his side, and 5 bone spikes popped out from my fingertips, piercing towards his temples with a sharp whistling sound. A warning bell rang in the bald, burly man's heart, and he barely managed to turn his head. The bone spikes grazed past his cheek, leaving behind a bloodstain so deep you could see the bone. "An S-grade Esper?" He cried out in shock, his eyes filled with disbelief. According to the intelligence, the strongest person in this base was clearly the leader, Caleb, an Esper who controlled bones. But Caleb had already fled. Who was this woman in front of him? I didn't give him time to think, and my attacks were like a violent storm. My body was incredibly flexible, every joint able to make unconventional twists, every attack launched from the most tricky angle. Bone spikes, bone blades, bone whips. Bone control, in my hands displayed ever-changing forms. The bald, burly man had a powerful defense and strength, but he couldn't even touch the hem of my clothes. He was being beaten down by me, forced to block in a sorry state, and the wounds on his body increased. The men he brought were also entangled by Jasper and the others, unable to provide any support. "Who the hell are you?" The bald, burly man barely managed to dodge the bone spike that I aimed at his eye once again, and roared. I stopped attacking, stood opposite him, and said lightly, "A person whose hands were personally crippled by the leader you speak of." The bald, burly man was stunned for a moment, then burst out laughing. "Ha! That idiot Caleb. He actually discarded an S-grade powerhouse as trash? That's hilarious." He laughed so hard that he bent over, and the stone defense on his body even loosened. "Beauty, don't work for that trash. Follow me. I guarantee you'll eat and drink well, and your status will be second only to mine." He extended an olive branch to me. I looked at him, my eyes calm. "You will all die." Before the words had faded, my body suddenly lowered, and my whole person slid along the ground, instantly appearing in front of him. In his horrified gaze, one of my hands pressed against his hard, rock-like abdomen. The next second, the bald, burly man's body stiffened abruptly, and he lowered his head, looking at his stomach in disbelief. His indestructible stone body, from the inside, cracked open with countless fissures. He spat out a mouthful of blood mixed with fragments of internal organs, and his body fell softly to the ground. Even in death, he couldn't understand how my attack had penetrated his defense and directly affected the bones in his body. With the leader dead, the remaining enemies were instantly thrown into chaos and were quickly eliminated by us. The base was temporarily safe. At this time, in a mountain cave dozens of kilometers away, Caleb was patching himself up in a sorry state, having been hit in the shoulder by stray bullets when he fled. He tried to use bone control to stabilize the injured bones, but found that his ability was intermittent and didn't listen to him at all. "Damn it! What the hell is going on?" He punched the stone wall in frustration. Ava, who was beside him, complained tearfully. "Caleb, it's all your fault. Why did you run so fast? My limited edition bag is lost in the base." Caleb was annoyed and roared. "Shut up. One more word and I'll throw you out to feed the mutated beasts." Ava was frightened by him and dared not say another word. Caleb breathed heavily, and the face of Aurora involuntarily appeared in his mind. He suddenly felt an inexplicable sense of panic. No, he had to go back to the base. His power, his status, everything he had was there. He absolutely couldn't lose it. It took Jasper and me 2 whole days to initially stabilize the base's order, counting the wounded, repairing the defenses, and comforting the people. Everyone was tired, but each person's face carried a hope born of survival. During this time, more and more ability users who had been suppressed by Caleb stood up and actively joined the reconstruction work. They looked at me with eyes full of admiration and trust. "Sister Aurora, from now on we'll follow you." "That's right. What kind of leader is he? He's not even as good as your little finger." I didn't respond to their support, just silently doing what needed to be done. Power for me has never been the goal. All I want is revenge. On the morning of the 3rd day, a message came from the watchtower. "Report. We've discovered former leader Caleb, and he's approaching the base with several people." The message caused an uproar throughout the base. "He still has the nerve to come back. Kill him. The traitor." The crowd was enraged. Jasper came to my side and asked for instructions. "Sister Aurora, what should we do? Should we just blast him with the cannons?" I shook my head, walked to the base's broadcast console, and picked up the microphone. My voice, through the broadcast, clearly spread to every corner of the base, and also reached Caleb's ears outside the base. "Caleb, you can come back. But come alone through the base gate. I'll give you a chance to explain." The broadcast ended, and Jasper asked in confusion, "Sister Aurora, why did you let him in? And give him a chance to explain?" I looked at the small black dot in the distance that was getting closer and closer, my eyes calm. Because I want him to die knowing why. I want everyone to see what kind of person the leader they once supported really is. What I want is not assassination, but judgment. Caleb obviously heard my broadcast. He hesitated for a moment, but finally told Ava and the others to wait outside, and walked towards the base gate alone. He probably thought that I still had feelings for him, and wanted to deceive me with sweet words. The base gate slowly opened for him. Greeting him was not my embrace, but the base members, standing on both sides of the road, glaring at him with anger. Every person's gaze was like a knife, cutting into him. Caleb's face became very ugly, But he gritted his teeth and walked through the crowd towards the administrative building. He thought I would be waiting for him at the door, as I had done before. But he was wrong. When he pushed open the door of his office, which had once symbolized supreme power, he froze. I was sitting on the leader's throne that should have belonged to him. Behind me stood Mr. Davis, whose leg he had broken, stood all the people he had hurt and abandoned. My hands were resting on the armrests, my nails neatly trimmed. He pointed at me in horror, his voice trembling. Your hands. Impossible. This is impossible. I looked at his face, which was full of shock and fear, and smiled slowly. Caleb, long time no see. Caleb's lips trembled, and he couldn't utter a single word. His mind was a mess, and everything happening before his eyes completely overturned his understanding. Why are my hands healed? Why am I sitting here? Why do those lowlifes dare to look at him with such gazes? You. How did you do it? He squeezed out a few words with difficulty, his gaze fixed on my hands. Want to know? I leisurely raised my left hand, admiring my slender fingers. Take a guess. Caleb's face turned green and white, then he suddenly thought of something, and a light of hope burst into his eyes. It's a healing ability, right? You found a powerful healing ability user. He grabbed at the straw, immediately putting on a look of deep remorse. Aurora, I knew you'd be all right. That's great. Listen to my explanation. That day I was bewitched. It was Ava, that bitch. She bewitched me. He unhesitatingly pushed all the responsibility onto Ava. She said your ability would threaten the entire base, and I was momentarily confused. I was doing it all for everyone's good. Aurora, the person I love most in my heart has always been you. He was eloquent and emotional, his eyes even reddened, as if he truly were a deceived and infatuated man. If I hadn't personally experienced that betrayal, I might almost have been fooled by him. The malice value above his head, minus 1900, remained unchanged. Oh, I raised an eyebrow. So you're not wrong, Ava is? Yes. It's all her fault. Caleb nodded repeatedly. Aurora, will you forgive me? Let's start over. I'll give you back the leader's position, and I'll listen to you from now on. As he spoke, he walked towards me, seemingly wanting to take my hand. Mr. Davis, behind me, leaned on his cane and took a step forward, shouting angrily, Stop! You shameless traitor! Caleb's face instantly darkened, and he glared fiercely at Mr. Davis. You cripple, do you even have the right to speak here? Cripple? I chuckled. Caleb, have you forgotten how he became a cripple? Caleb's expression froze. I slowly stood up and walked in front of him. Have you also forgotten how my hands were broken? My voice was light, but it carried a power that made his heart palpitate. Aurora, Caleb, you forgot, I interrupted him, raising my hand and gently stroking his shoulder. What was the last ability I copied? My fingertips, through the fabric, touched his collarbone. His whole body shuddered, and a familiar, bloodline-derived power fluctuation instantly made him understand something. His pupils contracted to pinpoints from extreme fear. No, it's you. Bone manipulation. How could it be? Shoo. I smiled, raised my hand, and gently clenched it in front of him. Caleb, can you feel it? Your bones are wailing. As soon as I finished speaking, he thumped and knelt on the ground, all the bones in his body making a teeth-grinding, creaking sound. He wanted to scream, but found that his jawbone was locked by an invisible force, and he couldn't even open his mouth. Excruciating pain came from every inch of bone in his body. He twisted in agony, like a fish thrown onto the shore. I walked in front of him, squatted down and looked at his face, distorted by pain. Does it hurt a lot? Don't worry, this is just the beginning. Caleb was kneeling on the ground, his body convulsing uncontrollably. Sweat drenched his hair, and his eyes were bloodshot with excruciating pain. He wanted to beg for mercy, to curse, but he couldn't make a sound, only a beast-like groan from his throat. In the office, everyone watched the scene in silence. Their faces held no sympathy, only glee. It's strange, isn't it? I looked at Caleb as if a teacher explaining a difficult problem to a student. It's clearly your ability, so why can I control you instead? I reached out and touched his forehead with my finger. Because you're too weak, Caleb. Your understanding of bone manipulation only extends to the shallowest levels of hardening and deformation. You treat it as a weapon, while I treat it as an art. My fingertips slowly slid down, across his nose, lips, and finally stopped on his chin. I not only copied your ability, but I also optimized it. I can feel the emotions of every bone. I can hear their voices. And your bones are telling me that they hate you as their master. As my voice fell, Caleb's body began to undergo bizarre changes. His fingers bent backward at unnatural angles, emitting crisp snapping sounds. His arms twisted like pretzels. His spine was dislocated vertebra by vertebra, causing his whole body to collapse. The whole process was slow and clear. I didn't let him die immediately, but instead let him consciously feel how his prized body was being destroyed inch by inch. Just then, the office door was violently kicked open. Ava rushed in with several of Caleb's loyal followers. Caleb. When she saw the pile of unrecognizable stuff on the ground, she let out an ear-splitting scream. "Ah, Aurora! You monster! What have you done to Caleb?" She rushed towards me like a madwoman. Jasper stepped forward and easily subdued her. I didn't look at her. My gaze remained fixed on Caleb. The malice value above his head had turned into a pitch-black infinity, due to extreme pain and fear. "Caleb, do you remember what you said when you crippled my hands?" I asked softly. "You said I was just a useless person who couldn't even open a bottle cap. Now you're less than a bottle cap." I raised my foot and gently stepped on his hand bones. It was the exact same sound as when he crushed my hand bones. His last trace of consciousness completely collapsed in the excruciating pain. I withdrew my foot, having lost all interest in him. Crushed to ashes, I meant what I said. I clenched my palm. On the ground, all the bones in Caleb's body were instantly crushed into the finest powder. His outer shell, losing its support, collapsed softly, turning into a grotesque human skin rug. Aha! Ava witnessed this unimaginable scene with her own eyes. Her mind completely shattered, screaming as she fainted. The few loyalists who rushed in were also scared out of their wits, kneeling on the ground and kowtowing frantically. "Spare us! Aurora, please spare us!" Looking at the pile of stuff that used to be Caleb, and the malice value above his head that had completely disappeared, my heart was at peace. My great revenge had been avenged, and there was no ecstasy as I had imagined, only a sense of settled dust. I turned around and looked at the people behind me with complex expressions. Caleb is dead, and the base cannot be without a leader for a day. I walked to the leader's throne and sat down again. From today onward, I am the new leader here. My eyes swept over everyone. Any objections? No one spoke. The entire office was silent. After a long time, Mr. Davis was the first to kneel on one knee, leaning on his cane. "Greetings, leader." Immediately after, Jasper, and everyone else, all knelt down on one knee. "Greetings, leader." The thunderous voices heralded the end of an old era, and the beginning of a new one. Outside the window, the sunlight of the apocalypse shone into the office for the first time, illuminating my rebirth.